Good to see you all back. Okay, by the way, I have few of the Docker stickers which I have carried and place it. We will be placing in the table or handing it over to you. Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot for coming to Kubetools. This is our third edition, and this is actually the fourth edition, the third one which we did in Toronto. So we have a small office of Kubetools at Toronto, and then we conducted there around 50 people. So outside India, if there is like 30 people who turn up for the meetup, it is considered as successful. Okay, here it would be like 200, 300 people, right? Okay, so okay, so this is one of the topic which I want to discuss about. How many of you have tried KRS or Kubetools, KRS Kubetools Recommender System here? So this is something which the community is trying to build, and we along the community we are trying to see like how we can build a Kubetools Recommender System, and I will tell you why. But before that, a little introduction. Um just wanted to introduce you. I am working as a developer advocate at Docker, author at Collabnix. Especially at Docker, it has been like part of the community. I have been there for around 8 to 9 years now, ever since Docker was like just like 1.0, and I have been writing about Docker, Kubernetes, IoT in the Collabnix.com, which has more than around 900 plus blogs now. I'm also part of Distinguished ARM ambassador. So if you are really interested in IoT specific project, you can reach out to me. I work very closely with ARM community. So there are 13 distinguished ARM ambassadors. So there are two personas. One is ARM ambassadors and one distinguished ARM ambassadors. So distinguished ARM ambassadors are like active members who contribute to the core project. So I have been writing blogs and I have been part of their conferences in the past. I'm also a Docker community leader, which means that I go ahead and conduct such kind of meetups. And in the past, I have worked in the company like VMware, Dell EMC for almost 8.5 years, Redis and CGI. Okay, so I'll start with the first question. So pick up your phone and just, you know, either you scan this or go to slido.com, and I want you to list out the max and maximum number of Kubernetes tools which you have heard in the last 3 years. Okay, just to repeat, in the last 3 years, the name of the Kubernetes tools which you have heard, just put it in this Slido, and let's see how we can demystify those tools and come up with some kind of a recommender system using GenAI. Okay, are we good? Yes. Okay, let me go ahead and look it live, like what you are pasting it. So this is how it is going to look like. New to this, 0, K9s, kubectl, streamz. Okay, wow. Keep it flowing, man. Okay, there are close to 11 participants who are typing it. Wow, I do see AWS, GCP, Kubernetes. Okay, you mean GKE? Okay, but again, that is the Kubernetes offering of the cloud. Minikube, Cube cost. I am hearing a lot. Any idea who acquired this company very recently? That's why. Okay. Cert orchestrator, Kubescan. Wow. Kubescape, Kubeflow, Argo CD, DevSpace. I'm enjoying this. You guys know so many tools, and I'm sure like it is not just like 3 years. I could see like these are the tools you are typing down and which exist more than say 5 years ago, right? They have been introduced. Argo CD, Kubernetes GPT. Wow, one of the most important tool, kubectl. How can you forget that? The whole life start with that. I'm hearing cube cost lot number of time. Helm file, Rancher, KRS. Wow, this looks good. Okay, keep typing. I want to know. I want to see like how many tools you know. I think we are close to around 100 plus tools, right? Easily. But there are a lot of tools like kubelens, kubebench. This is good. Istio. Still participants are typing. Just let's wait for 1 more minute and then we'll jump into the topic. Prometheus, Grafana, vCluster, K6. Wow. Nice. Okay. Thank you so much. Now let me tell you the reality. Okay, so this is one of the member of CNCF Technical Oversight Committee, and he wrote a blog. Is the Kubernetes or CNCF ecosystem too big? Now you can understand whatever the tool you have listed, right? This was something which was coming from the community around like 5 years ago, and we started with a repo called kubetools.collabinix.com. And you won't imagine today we have more than 1,000 plus tools. And do you think like every company is using those tools? Yes, they might be using it. The reason being, every tool solves one problem at one point of time, right? One tool can't solve your all the problems. There are tools which are for testing. There are tools for the observability tools. There are some popular tools. There are some tools which have been archived, right? So this guy, whose name is Brian Grant, so what he did, he wrote a blog and he started talking about CNCF ecosystem itself, okay, because most of the tool which you have listed, they are either part of CNCF landscape. So how many of you know about the CNCF landscape here? I do see very less hand. Okay, definitely there is. This is one of the topic which I should talk about. Okay, so he's talking about the ecosystem being complex because now since you have listed all these tools, which one to choose, right? That's the most difficult part. So I call it as CNCF landscape is a complex hellscape. So this is a recorded video. Just today morning I recorded that, and I was scrolling it down to look at landscape 2.0. I don't know whether 1.0 or 2.0. I guess 1.0. And I started scrolling up. You can see the number of tools here, man. And on the left hand side, I don't know whether it is visible. You can see that there are new categories which have been introduced like CNAI, cloud native AI. I was part of this meeting, last two meetings, and I can see that there has been so many discussion happening about now AI coming to this CNCF landscape. It is again more complexity. It brings more and more complexity, right? Because now we are trying to solve that complexity through AI. There is a lot of hallucination. There is a lot of discussion which is going on, and hardly they were like, we went ahead and presented KRS, and they were like, wow, this is one tool which we want to see growing, right? Because there are certain number of tools which uses AI. Now think of it is like if you can use AI to troubleshoot your Kubernetes cluster or chat with your Kubernetes cluster, right? How it is going to be. So now you might be, since CNCF is coming from, is handled by the Linux Foundation, so it means that most of the things will be in the open source. Now, from where this particular list is coming from, when I looked into it, if you go to github.com/cncf/landscape, landscape.yaml, this is basically the YAML file from where the overall CNCF. Now the CNCF, it starts with the sandbox, it goes to your incubation, and then it goes to the graduation. Okay, so if you have any product and if you want to enter into the CNCF, because CNCF is now is Linux Foundation, is coming from the Linux Foundation, which supports this cloud native projects. Okay, so this is the list which we were looking at, and it is again more complex, and this list keeps on growing, and every KubeCon, okay, every KubeCon they announce some incubation, some kind of a graduation, some sandbox. Okay, now let's talk about the problem statement. The problem statement is that it was found that, so this is one of the report from Cast AI, and they created a report called as State of Kubernetes Reports over provisioning in real life containers application. They found that 60% of DevOps engineer spend more than 10 hours per week in search of optimized Kubernetes tool. Now, if you put all these names in your resume, definitely you are going to get the call from the company for the interview. The reason being, these DevOps engineers has to, they should be aware of these tools, because these tools solve one problem at one point of time. Say your company wants some kind of an observability tool. Definitely there are popular tools like Grafana, but even if you want to use the Grafana, it can't solve all your problem, right? You have to rely on some kind of plugins within the Grafana or data source within the Grafana to achieve it, right? And it was also found that 40% of DevOps engineers have used the wrong Kubernetes tools. So I will tell you one story. I was trying to uh, fetch the logs from the multiple containers running inside a pod, and we were using some kind of a script. Then I came to know that there is a tool called Kubetail. We use that tool, but again, at one point of time, since this is an open source, there is not much support out of it. If you are stuck, means you have to rely on these open source maintainers, right? And there was no response, and then we dropped it. So one tool can solve your one problem, but it can't solve your all the problem. And Kubernetes is more complex, right? Today, even today, I see the blog saying how to simplify Kubernetes, because it has been 10 years now, still complex. So again, there is a cost which is involved, as you see here. So what I did around 5 months back, I started, I was, to learn the Kubernetes like chemistry, this periodic table. I was helping my kid with the periodic table, and then I just thought that, okay, let me fit the Kubernetes tool into the periodic table. And it took me just 30 minutes to occupy. So whatever the element which you are seeing is not a chemical products. Okay, this is not an elements, right? Whatever you see here is basically a Kubernetes tools, and it was so easy for me, because every alphabet, with every alphabet there is a Kubernetes tool which is involved, and that shows that when you choose the right Kubernetes tool, it is so complex, right, inside the company. So we introduced something called as KRS, which is Kubetools Recommender System. This project we started around 3 months back. This is one problem statement where even CNCF is not looking at, but I could see that there has been some kind of an activity. So when we went ahead to CNAI, and this is basically a GenAI powered Kubetools Recommender System. It will scan your Kubernetes cluster and recommend you with the tools. Okay, and how does the recommendation work? All of these things I'm going to talk. But this is something which we just started. Like there are around 5 people who are working on it. Uh, I am the only one here. The rest of the team sits in Toronto. We have a small office. So we projected this idea. We shared this idea with the Canadian government, and they were able to provide us with the space. They are able to fund for this particular project, and we started working on it. So think of it as like this is a kind of a weekend project for us. Okay, what problem does KRS solve? It is a GenAI powered Kubetools recommender system. It has an ability to scan your existing Kubernetes cluster, whether it is in the cloud, whether it is on Docker desktop, or say if you have a mini kube running, it works everywhere. It just needs kube config. It detects the tool from your cluster. It generates the recommendation. It also provides you a health check. With the health check, you will see that we are using an LLM model like Hugging Face, as well as local AI, as well as OpenAI, right? So I will show you in the demo. I should be able to export the pods information. And yeah, this is a repo called Kubetools KRS. Let me show you this. So you can see here, like we just started around 3 months back, and this is an open source project. Anyone can come in. They can go ahead and contribute. And okay, let me. So this is a kind of a project. So let me go to the other slide, which talks about how this Kubernetes recommender, say Kubetools recommender system works. So we have certain bunch of Python API libraries. What we do, we go to all these websites, Stack Overflow, even the Cloud Native Landscape, even the Kubernetes Forum, Indeed, and we basically fetch all those metrics and helps you in finding out which is the popular tool all across the globe. And then based on that, we do a cleaning and parsing, metrics collection, centralized database. And when we are doing this metrics collection, this is where we bring an AI into the picture. We also recently, based on the community feedback, we also went ahead and introduced a new command called KRS Health, which will use GenAI to uh, fix your Kubernetes cluster. It will recommend you with the Kubernetes cluster. So this is how it is going to look like. So we have tested in multiple environments like EKS, Minikube, Docker Desktop. We built a Docker extension. How many of you know about Docker extension here? Just one or two hands. Okay. And then we have a support for AI model. We are part of the business incubators like Brampton and TBDC. It is Toronto Business Development Center and Brampton Board of Trade. They have been investing, bringing us some kind of investors to see how we can go ahead and promote this tool. We have one of the event which is happening in October, the second week of October, Kubetools Day 2. So in parallel, we are doing all these events just to get more and more contributors. Okay, so what we are going to do today, we already have Docker Desktop installed. We will enable Kubernetes. I will install KRS, integrate with LLM backend. Okay, I'm going to show you that. The easiest way would be I have already a Docker Desktop installed. Already the Kubernetes is enabled. What I'm going to do here is I will show you both the way. One is the CLI. So this tool is completely based on the Python, but I will show you the extension which we have built. Okay, so let me jump to my Docker desktop, and you can see here there is an extensions, right? Let me go ahead. Okay, I don't know how many of you know, but in Docker desktop we have terminal which we have integrated right into Docker desktop. You can open the terminal here. You don't really have to go to the VS Code or open a key or any item 2 or something like that. So I can go to KRS Docker extension. Can you see the screen? I don't know. Okay. And then I can do make build extension. So what it will do, it will go to the GitHub, try to, it will go to the GitHub, sorry, Docker Hub, try to fetch this particular image, and based on that, it will build the extension. So to install the extension, I have make install extension. And Docker extension is how you integrate third-party tool on top of Docker Desktop. So you can build your own Grafana, you can build your own Prometheus on top of Docker Desktop. Okay. So Docker Desktop is a development tool. It is not just a deployment tool. It is more like a development tool. So once you click on this, you get something called as how you chat with the Kubernetes cluster. Now I'm going to chat with the Kubernetes cluster. Okay. I can go ahead and initialize it. Once I initialize, what it will do, it will load some kind of libraries and binaries, and in one way it will go ahead and initialize the scanner. We wanted to have just a chat window where anyone can go ahead and start chatting with it. I can scan my cluster. Once I scan my cluster, and you know what, this was built just last week, so don't go with the look and feel. Okay, so what it will do, it will scan my Kubernetes cluster. Now what is this Kubernetes cluster, where it is running? So you can see here that I have a Kubernetes cluster enabled. We have a new feature which is coming in where we can run a multi-node Kubernetes cluster on Docker Desktop. So we are coming up with that kind of a feature also. So Kubernetes is enabled. That's it. All you need. So I can initialize it. I can scan. So once I scan it, you can see here that before this presentation, I just went ahead and installed few of the tools which you have listed in Slido: KubeShark, KubeView, Portainer, Grafana, and it fetched the ranking here. Now this is a ranking where we are building internally, right? This is something which we have not open source. This ranking algorithm is something which we are going to use when you will be building the. How many of you know about the foundation model? Foundation model, right? So imagine that if you have a model, like most of the model which are available, like Hugging Face, Local AI, and all of these things, these models either are built by any company, like OpenAI is built by the OpenAI, right? So what the Chat GPT which you are using. Now imagine that the model which is specifically built for the Kubernetes, right, or CNCF landscape, right? So we are trying to build that, and we will be using all those data there, right? And the end product will be in the form of a JSON with some kind of a ranking. So you can see here that KubeShark holds the rank of 4 under the category alert and monitoring. Okay. Now which is the one? You have a KubeView which holds the rank 30. It is the ranking is based on the popularity from all the social media metrics which it is collecting. Okay, and this is something which is in-house. We haven't open source at this point of time. We have a portainer which is like 39. Imagine that it is falling under the cluster management, right? So we have a Grafana on one. It is most popular alert and monitoring tool. Now what I can do here, I can ask my recommender system, okay, recommend me the tool. And what it does in alert and monitoring says Grafana, you already listed. And you are also looking at the CNCF. So what we are doing, we are trying to match the landscape.yaml, which is coming from the CNCF, and showing you that whatever the tool which we have listed, either it might be listed or unlisted in the CNCF. So in cluster with core CLI, K9s is something which I am recommending, and this recommendation is coming from the in-house Kubernetes cluster which you are running. So think of it as like KRS is a GitHub pilot for you. It understands the context of the Kubernetes cluster and it is recommending you. Okay. In the same way, in the cluster management, we have Rancher, right? The reason why it is not showing unlisted because Rancher changed the name to Rancher Kubernetes. So we need to update that, but that's the name change. Now, what we are trying to do here is definitely in the coming release, you won't see all these buttons. It will be a very easy way to chat with the Kubernetes. In my Kubernetes cluster, running a single node cluster, running on my Docker desktop, I have all these namespaces. Example, voting app, kube node, kube system, kube view, monitoring. I can even see the pods here. I can click on the pods and I can see all these pods are running. Now, let me show you one interesting stuff, the health. Now imagine that you are debugging the system, right? How you use the GenAI. So this is based on the community ask. So once you start this, there is a container which runs and it asks you about the model. So we today support Hugging Face, OpenAI, as well as we support for the local AI also. And that has to be incorporated. I think it is still in the PR. So what I can do here, I can select one. It will install all the necessary libraries for the OpenAI. Till that time, what I am going to do here, let me pick up OpenAI key. So I'm going to copy this OpenAI key, go back. I will add this key. It will ask about OpenAI model name. I'm going to pick up GPT 3.5 Turbo. It will ask me about, okay, what is the namespace where you want to dig into and debug the issue. So I will say, if I select say 5, which is Cube system, I want to see like what is happening in the core, and then pick up the I think API controller. So once I do this, it will show me all the error messages right now, right? It will detect all the logs. And now I start chatting with the Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so let me look at the log first. So there are several logs and warnings in the provided log entries. Okay, tell me more about log 1. So now I'm started chatting with the API server, Kubernetes API server, and it gives me all the information about, okay, what is the issue all about? The error is due to the storage error with code 4 indicating an invalid object. It mentions a specific key in the storage registry and all of this thing. Okay, how to fix this issue? It's just like a GitHub Copilot, okay? It understands the context of your code and it is giving you the information, okay, build this front end, build this back end and all of this thing. So you start chatting with the Kubernetes cluster. Again, as I said, right, I can't show you the example of Hugging Face. The reason being the models are like very large, like 4 GB, and it is going to take the entire session. But you can select the Hugging Face. You can provide, say, any of the model, like Code, Llama, or something like that. So I can show you a quick stuff which I have been doing here. So if you go to GitHub repo, so you can see here that we have a CLI. So if you do a KRS, even you can use it in the CLI also. So I showed you, we started with the CLI version of it, and under KRS, you can see how the KRS health would look like. So this is a command line interface where you can see health, init, namespaces, and I can run the same specific commands. Like say if I want to run KRS init, I can initialize it, KRS scan. All we did is we just converted into the button so that it is easy for me to show you. At the same time, I can even run KRS recommend. And when I do KRS health, it shows me about, okay, choose your model provider. And if I say pick up the Hugging Face, what it will do, it will install the transformers, which is required. I can specify it will install PyTorch, right? And I can also specify any of the model. But again, these models are going to take a long time. So I'm not going to download those models. Let's see. So this is how it is going to look like. Let me show you. Okay, if I want to use a Hugging Face, once you press 2, you can give this name code llama 13b or something like that. But again, it is going to take time. So you need to have a space to do that. So the whole idea to show you is that you can chat with the Kubernetes cluster. There you can do a GenAI based recommender system, and this project is like an open source project. We are also looking out for contributors. And to show you, and if you want to use, say, we are also introduce this under the killer coda. So how many of you know about the killer coda here? Yes. So if you want to literally try it out, say you don't want to use Docker desktop, you don't want to even use your local machine, you can go to the killer coda and you can just keep on installing this. How to install it? You can see it from the scratch itself. I can go ahead and click on the left hand side. On the right hand side, my command runs and the KRS is up. So this is something which we started, as I said, right, 3 months back. We wanted to. We do have a roadmap where we wanted to, you know, do a lot of stuff. First thing is KRS Docker extension is something which we are trying to build. Our plan is to now integrate with the cloud. So think of it as like when you open a Docker extension, now it will ask you for the cloud provider. You could choose, say, AWS or EKS, and then it will just go ahead and fetch all the tools from the EKS, right? We are also planning to build our own Kubetools sandbox so that you can try out these tools. So everything will be available in the form of a Docker extension. And then some kind of an, as I said, right, we are planning to build our own Kubetools foundation model, which means that these models can be used by the any company or inside the organization to see all the recommended tools, because these tools, if you look at the number of tools today, so if you go to kubetools.collabnix.com, so this tool has been built by the communities, has more than around 2.8K stars. And you can see the categories, the tab. Look at the tools here. Now, the thing is, these tools have been categorized based on the GitHub stars, but GitHub star doesn't make any sense, right? There are so many tools which are even archived and even used by the companies, right? So their internal development team is working on that and all. But look at each of these categories. There are close to around more than 1000 plus tools. And as you scroll down, this repo is like 3 years old. And our idea was to not just the GitHub, but let's collect the data or metrics from all across the globe, all the tools, Reddit, Twitter, LinkedIn, put it in one place, try to do some kind of a parsing, cleaning, and after that, use the AI to know what is the recommended tool based on your cluster. So it will understand the context of the cluster. So we wanted to turn this particular idea into a kind of a product, and this is what we started. And just to let you know that we were finalist winner of Backdrop Build. Backdrop Build, again, it's considered it more like an hackathon, which is organized where they choose around, say, 20 to 25 different companies and they connect to the partners. So we are working. We will be closely working with even Google Cloud. We will get the access because we need more and more powerful GPUs to run this foundation model. So that is the reason. So we are V4, V5, V6 finalist, which means that for us, it is a good news that we will be connected to all those partners. We'll working very closely. And since this is just like 3 months, I'm expecting that this is going to grow. And at least you never know, right? We might enter, the plan is to enter into the incubation of CNCF. That is the plan, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so with this, I also wanted to present that previously we had around 2 Kubetools Day, which happened in Bangalore, one in Toronto, and the next one is happening in Toronto. So if you have any friend in Canada, you can refer him. So with this, yes, before even building this product, we already have close to around 10K followers on Twitter. So you can see there's a lot of excitement, I would say. But you can follow us on Twitter. We have a Slack channel which we started very recently. We have a Kubetools.io website where we are going to put some kind of a ranking. We are going to put all those information. So yes, if you have any question, you can just ask. Yeah.
I want to have the same type of result, means like I want to analyze. So what extra things I have to provide means like because the what I think is that the biggest advantage is that the KRS already know the context. So how much context it needs, means like when it fires a request to the LLM model, then what all things it is sending, that how the cluster is made and what is. So I want to know about that.
Yes. So definitely there is, this is one of the question which was raised in the first presentation. Like we are not sending all the information. So these, whenever you pass this key, OpenAI key, or when you are talking to the Hugging Face model, say you have a local model something, we don't pass all the logs to them. Look, this is a story of logs. So it collects, say if you have a pods running, and each of these pods, say the demo which I showed was an API server. API server is generating some kind of logs, and these logs are not sending in a single, like we are not sending the complete log to OpenAI. It is sending in the encrypted format, and it is sending in the format that even you won't understand what is being sent, right? So it is an encrypted message. It is compressed, and that log is being analyzed just like a GitHub pilot, right? What it does, the that log has been analyzed, and based on that it is recommending you that, okay, if this particular pattern, of error occurs, this is a solution. So how do you troubleshoot an issue when you are facing some issues in the log? So what do? You go to the Google, search for it, or go to the official documentation, search for it, right? And when you go to the Chat GPT, when you go to Gemini and ask for that, it might or might not hallucinate, right? It might give you some kind of an recommendation, and it is not fixing itself, right? Copilot doesn't fix you. It just recommends you that, okay, if you copy this code and put it in the front end, it might work. So the same thing we are doing here. We are just passing the logs in the encrypted, in a compressed format, and even the end user is not going to, even OpenAI is not going to understand what it is all about, right? And then based on that, we are recommending that, okay, if this error occurs, because we are talking about logs now, if this error occurs, then these are the recommendation way, like method 1, method 2, method 3.
So I'm not more worried about, means like what logs we are passing, because making the whole context from the logs is anyway very difficult. If I give someone random logs, it is very difficult of what system I'm running and what I'm doing.
Mhm.
They can get a hint, but not exactly. I am more worried about what my like cluster, how many pods are there, what I am doing, all the things that KRS has information. It has scanned my cluster.
Mhm.
So are we passing that
No,
information to?
no, we are not passing.
Yeah,
We are.
if we are not passing that, then if I can just copy paste those logs and provide it to like GPT-4 GUI or something, so it will also recommend me similar answer which KRS provided me.
Yes. So look, the thing is, there are two things, right? One is logs, the KRS health. One is KRS recommend. KRS recommendation, what it is doing, that is our in-house AI product, which we are recommending it. So that is something which you can't go to the Twitter and find it out, or any of the social media, right? Whatever we are talking about KRS health is only for the logs.
Okay.
Okay, it is only for the logs, not the tools and all these things. So yeah, they are two different things.
Okay, two
Yeah,
different things.
yeah,
Okay.
yep. Thanks. Yep.
Yeah, hi. So you mentioned the when recommendations happened, then there was some ranking mentioned with them, right? So, for example, Grafana was mentioned as like the number one for monitoring and all. So that recommendation, that is like all the cube tools, and then in that the ranking is there, or Grafana is number one in monitoring tools, and or like the ranking of number one, that is coming based on the popularity, right? So
Yes,
that is happening on the runtime or like in the present, or is it like a data which is saved
that is
somewhere?
that is saved. on a frequent basis, it is not happening because it is again difficult, right? You can't get it. So what we are doing here, so we have an internal project which basically collects all this data.
Hmm.
Mostly we are using the Python libraries. Say for Reddit we have a separate Python library and all of this thing which we have built, and that gets all the data and that saves in the form of the JSON, and that we are pushing it here, right? And then that is being, maybe in the form of the JSON file, and that is being whatever you see here. So this is not a real time which is happening because it takes time to collect all the data from all those social media.
Correct.
So yeah, we do it like right now we are doing it every week, I would say, because it takes time right now because it is not a full-fledged solution, I would say. But r- real time it is very difficult for such kind of,
Yeah,
yeah.
and the for model which you are using, we are using plain foundational model. We are not
Yeah,
training it,
we are
fine tuning or
very
something.
early in the stage. One of the reason why we are working very closely with Google Cloud, and there are a few other folks, is these foundation model, right? They requires a higher
High
end
GPU.
GPUs, right? So that is something which we have started working. Like we haven't identified the complete stuff, and this was something I have been discussing with even ARM because they will be funding all the high end server to us. So in ARM community, as I've been part of Distinguished ARM Ambassador, I don't know how many of you know, if you want to work on any of the ARM-based servers, say uh, NVIDIA Jetson Nano, or you are building your own model, right? And if you need that access, so we have a portal where you can just go ahead and ask about these servers, right? But you have to justify that since I am close to them, and you need to come up with some kind of a content or contribute or talk about your solution in any of these conferences. That is what they are expecting. But you can get access to this Jetson Nano Raspberry Pi remotely for free, okay? And if you are interested, just let me know. There is a portal, you just have to go there, choose Raspberry Pi, and you can remotely connect and do your project. The only thing is, if you want a camera module to be connected and all of this thing, that kind of stuff, we are still in the very alpha version. But maybe down the line, 3 months after, you will see that you can even click like a no code, just like click on, just like I don't know whether you heard about the Node-RED, how you connect the boxes and the camera module gets connected. So all of these things are there. So yes, these hardwares, foundation model is quite early for us. We are still evaluating a kind of an hardware for them, and I believe that these model like Code Llama, like 7 billion to 80 billion, all of these parameters, right? It requires a huge computation. So yes, we are very early in foundation. Maybe in the next uh, Kubetools, I might be able to tell some kind of a story around it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we can take the last question, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how much time it is. Do we have time? No.
Last question.
Okay. Last question. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to know what are the key parameters or the major parameters considered in evaluating the tools and recommending them whenever you take, and what is the benchmark, and whenever you recommend some tool, like against what is it benchmarked, and how can we believe that that's the right tool that we get? Like, is
Okay.
there any testing done for that? That's the first question. And the
Okay.
second question is, whenever you're sending the logs, right, for health, I wanted to know what kind of logs do you send? Do you send the logs which are generated from the application? Like, even though you encrypt and send it, and then while analyzing it, the model of course uses that internally, even if you give for ChatGPT or something. So I just wanted to know, like, what kind of logs? Is it like data sensitive logs or only related to the container logs? What kind of logs are you trying to
Okay.
do? Yeah.
Sure. So what was the first question?
Parameters. What are the parameters that you have considered while
Okay.
recommending it?
So what we do internally, we have something called as, we call as a scoring, right? And this score is calculated from all the social media. So imagine that you go to the Reddit and try to see all those sentiment analysis, like what are the positive, what are the negative, who is using it. We calculate all of those parameters and put it in one place. In the same way, it applies from Twitter, we LinkedIn, Indeed, even we are looking at the jobs, right? Now, based on that, we collect all those parameter, and I wanted to show you something. If I don't know whether, okay, sorry. So we do have a portal called ranking.kubetools.io. We are like one of the engineers is working on that, and it will give you the score. Okay, that score is calculated on based on lot of metrics around the popularity. How many times this particular term has been used on Twitter, and that too tied up with positive or negative sentiment analysis or something like that, right? So those parameters are there, and at the end we get a score, and that score is primarily it decides the ranking. So that is again the internal. We haven't open sourced that, and we have a dedicated team who is working on that, and based on that we do the score, right? I can't share more
Yeah.
stuff other than that. But the other point which you said, right, whatever the logs which you are sending, yes, right now if you look at KRS health, we are just picking up the pods logs. We are right now we are working on, if you have a multi container running inside a pod, that kind of how it is going to detect that. So there is one issue which has been raised by one of the CNCF, like CNCF members itself, like they are looking at this repo. And if you look at, I don't know, maybe I can show you this. You go to the issues here, and you can see here the KRS health doesn't work correctly on multi-container pods, right? Imagine that if you have a pod, you have a multiple container running inside a pod, how it is going to send the logs. As I said, right, there are things which has to be, again, this guy is using GPT 3.5 turbo, he faced some issues, and when he said, like, there is some kind of a hallucination here where it says, okay, there is no error log, and then after that you say, like, you have an error log with PHP container, Nginx, so there is some kind of a fixes which has to be done. So we are only considering logs at this point of time. We are not sending any tools information. Even multi-container pod is something which we need to look, because this person has raised an issue. And when you say logs, it is just like, as you see, right, the API server controller logs which we have, like we are just sending a snippet of it encrypted format, so that the end user will never know. If you are really interested to know what is happening, I think this is something which you can even find in the code itself, like how it is happening, right? Maybe you have to go to the KRS here, and maybe somewhere in the Python script, if you can, if you can find that. But yes, it's very minimalistic information. So we have a in-house data scientist who has been working on those primarily. So maybe if you are interested, I can connect him, connect you to him, and then you guys can discuss about it. But the whole idea is, the information which we are right now sending to OpenAI is like a more like an encrypted, and it is only considering the logs which is coming from the specific pod, and then that we are talking to the chat GPT.
Is this production ready or
No, no, no.
not ready?
This is a weekend project, man.
Ah, cool.
Okay, then I think I have taken a lot of time. If there is any, if you are interested, I will tell you, like, we have a Slack channel. How many of you are part of Collabinic Slack? You can see the name here, Collabinic Slack. So Collabinic Slack, today we have close to around 10K members. You can be also part of it. You just search for Collabinic Slack, and then we can have discussion. And we also have a Kubetools Slack, where you can come in, you can contribute. This is very early stage, not even alpha, okay? So you can always come in. We are looking for the contributors, and definitely trust me, this is something which we are trying to, the problem which exists. It is not like ready-made problem which we are thinking about the problem statement. It's just that we are too early in this game, and definitely there is some kind of a result which I'm expecting in next 3 to 4 months. Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you for your time.
Have a huge round of applause for Ajit.
Yeah.
Uh,